This happened 2 months ago. I am sharing this because I need people to understand what medical coercion looks like. What it means when someone you trust uses your own body against you. What it feels like to discover that the person you married destroyed who you were to create someone he preferred. My name is Claire Whitman, and I woke up in the hospital with no memory of the past 6 months. My husband told me I had suffered a dementia-like episode. He lied. What he actually did was worse than anything I could have imagined. And now, I am something I do not recognize. Someone hollow. And I need you to know how it happened. I remember everything up to June. It is January now. June through December is just gone. Blank. Like someone took scissors to my timeline and cut out half a year. The doctor said it was rare but not unheard of. Stress-induced amnesia. Dissociative fugue state. They used a lot of terms. But the basic explanation was that my brain had experienced trauma and responded by erasing recent memories to protect itself. They said with time and therapy, some memories might return. That I should be patient. That I was lucky to be alive. My husband Philip picked me up from the hospital. He was attentive, concerned, told me he had been terrified. That watching me deteriorate over 6 months had been unbearable. That he was so relieved I was home safe. Our daughter Chloe, 16 years old, hugged me tight. Said she had missed me. That things had been hard. I felt love for them. At least, I thought I did. But something was wrong. The emotion felt distant, like I was performing rather than experiencing. Like I was watching myself hug my daughter instead of actually feeling the hug. I had told myself it was the amnesia. That emotional connections would strengthen as I readjusted. The house felt familiar but wrong. Small things were different. Furniture rearranged. Pictures removed from walls. My office had been cleaned out. Philip said he had organized it while I was ill. That he thought a fresh start would help. I accepted the explanation. Tried to settle back into life. But the wrongness persisted. And over the next few weeks, I started noticing patterns. I did not feel attached to Philip. We slept in the same bed. He kissed me goodnight. But I felt nothing. No warmth. No desire. No connection. I assumed it was temporary. That the part of my brain responsible for romantic love had been damaged and needed time to heal. But then I noticed I did not feel attached to anyone. Not Philip. Not Chloe. Not my parents when they visited. Not my friends. I could recognize them. Could remember our history. Could engage in conversation. But the emotional component was missing. I felt like I was playing a role. Wife. Mother. Daughter. Friend. Going through motions because that was what I was supposed to do. But feeling nothing genuine underneath. I mentioned this to Philip. He said it was normal. That trauma affected people differently. That I should give myself time. I went to therapy. The therapist asked me about the 6 months I could not remember. I told her I had no idea what happened. She asked Philip. He said I had become withdrawn. Stopped engaging with the family. Stopped working. Spent days in bed. He said he had tried to help, but I pushed him away. The therapist nodded. Said it sounded like severe depression. That the memory loss might be my mind protecting me from that painful period. I believed her. Believed him. For a while. But then I found the journal. It was hidden in the garage, behind boxes of old tax documents. A leather-bound notebook I did not recognize. I opened it. Saw my handwriting. Entries dated from June through early December. The final entry was from December 14th. 2 weeks before I woke up in the hospital, I started reading, and everything changed. The journal detailed my life over those 6 months, and it was not what Philip had described. I had not been depressed. I had been planning to leave him. The entries explained why. Philip was controlling, had been for years, monitored my phone, questioned where I went, who I spoke to, made decisions about my career without consulting me, used money as leverage, criticized my appearance, my choices, my independence. The journal described incident after incident. Times he had manipulated me, isolated me from friends, convinced me I was overreacting, that I was too sensitive, that I was the problem. Classic coercive control. I had finally recognized it, and I had been preparing to divorce him. But there was more. The journal also detailed something about Chloe. She had been involved in a bullying campaign at school, a sustained, cruel harassment of another student. The victim had attempted suicide, survived. But the investigation had uncovered Chloe's involvement. Text messages, social media posts, coordinated efforts to isolate and torment this girl. I had found out, confronted Chloe. She had lied, minimized, blamed the victim. I had been horrified, not just by what she had done, but by her complete lack of remorse. I decided she needed to face consequences, real consequences. I was planning to ensure the school and potentially legal authorities were fully informed. Philip had disagreed, said I was overreacting, that teenage drama should not ruin Chloe's future, that we needed to protect our daughter. I had refused, said protecting her from consequences was not protecting her. It was enabling her. The final entries showed growing conflict between Philip and me over this issue. And then the entries stopped. December 14th. The last line read, Philip suggested a treatment. Said it could help my stress. I am considering it. I need clarity. I am so tired. I confronted Philip, showed him the journal, asked what treatment he had suggested. He went pale, did not speak for a long moment. Then he admitted it. There was a procedure, experimental, not approved in the United States, conducted by a doctor he knew from medical school, someone willing to work off the books. The procedure was called cognitive restructuring. Philip described it as targeted memory suppression combined with neural reconditioning. The goal was to erase specific memories and replace them with desired behavioral patterns. It was illegal, dangerous, and Philip had convinced me to undergo it. I asked why. Why would I agree to something like that? He said I had not agreed willingly, that I had refused at first, but he had convinced me I was having a breakdown, that I was paranoid, that my stress was affecting my judgment, that this treatment would help me feel like myself again. He had used my trust in him, my exhaustion, my confusion, and he had manipulated me into consenting to a procedure designed to erase the parts of me he did not like, the parts that wanted to leave, the parts that were going to hold Chloe accountable, the parts that questioned his control. The procedure had worked. My memories of the past 6 months were gone. My plans to leave, my knowledge of Chloe's bullying, my recognition of Philip's abuse, all erased. But it had done something else too, something the doctor had warned about but Philip had accepted as an acceptable risk. The procedure had damaged my capacity for emotional connection, the parts of my brain responsible for attachment, for love, for deep feeling, had been affected. Permanently. I would never feel the way I used to. I would spend the rest of my life emotionally hollow. A shell performing the role of wife and mother, but feeling nothing real underneath. I asked Philip if he understood what he had done. He said he had saved our marriage, saved our family, that had been about to destroy everything over minor issues, that sacrificing some memories, some emotional depth, was worth preserving our life together. I asked if he heard himself, if he understood that he had violated me, destroyed a fundamental part of who I was. He said I was being dramatic, that I was still me, just healthier, more stable, better. I asked about Chloe, about the bullying. He admitted she had been involved, that there had been consequences at school, suspension, mandatory counseling, but nothing legal, nothing permanent on her record, because I had not been there to push for it, because the version of me he had created did not remember, did not care. Chloe had been relieved, had thanked her father for protecting her, had agreed to help keep the procedure secret. Mother and daughter, conspiring to ensure I never found out what had been done to me. I could have gone to the police, could have reported Philip for medical assault, could have exposed the doctor who performed the procedure. But I did not, because I understood something Philip did not. He had not saved me. He had killed me. The person I used to be, the one who felt love and anger and fear and joy, that person was gone. And what remained was something incapable of caring enough to seek justice. I felt nothing toward Philip. Not love, not hate, not betrayal, just emptiness. And that emptiness extended to everything. I did, however, arrange one thing. I contacted the victim's family, the girl Chloe had bullied, provided them with evidence I found. Text messages Chloe had deleted, but I recovered from cloud backups. Social media posts she thought were erased. A timeline of the harassment. I did this not because I felt outrage, not because I wanted justice, but because logically, objectively, I understood that actions should have consequences. That Chloe needed to learn this, even if I could not feel the moral imperative behind it. The evidence led to legal action. Civil suit. Chloe is now facing real consequences. Philip is furious. Says I have destroyed our daughter's future. I told him he destroyed mine first. That what I did was simply reciprocity. He cried, begged me to stop the process. I explained that I could not, that the paperwork was filed, the lawyers involved. It was beyond my control now. But more importantly, I explained that I did not want to stop it. Not because I cared about justice, but because I did not care about Chloe, did not care about his pain, did not care about anything. And that was his fault, his procedure, his choices, his consequences. I am leaving Philip, not because I hate him, not because I am angry, but because there is no reason to stay. I feel nothing toward him. Our marriage is dead because I am emotionally dead. He created this. He thought he could erase the parts of me that challenged him and keep the parts he liked. But you cannot selectively destroy someone's brain and expect them to remain functional. You cannot eliminate capacity for certain emotions without affecting all emotions. You cannot erase love without erasing the ability to love. I live alone now. Small apartment. Quiet. I go through the motions. Work. Eat. Sleep. Exist. But I do not feel alive. I watch other people experience joy and connection, and I understand intellectually what they are experiencing, but I cannot access it myself. I am a ghost in my own body. Present, but not really here. Aware, but not feeling. Existing, but not living. Philip calls. leaves messages, begs me to come home, to give him another chance, to remember that we built a life together. I do not return his calls, not out of spite, but because there is no point. He wants me to feel something toward him. Anything. Anger would be better than this emptiness. But I cannot give him that. He destroyed the parts of me that could feel. And what remains is just observation. Just analysis. Just mechanical existence. Chloe sent me a letter, apologizing, saying she understands now what her father did was wrong, that she should have stopped him, that she is sorry. I read the letter, understood the words, recognized the attempt at reconciliation, but felt nothing, no forgiveness, no resentment, just acknowledgement that she had written words on paper and sent them to me. I did not respond. What would be the point? She wants absolution. I cannot grant it because I cannot care enough to judge her in the first place. This is my warning. To anyone in a relationship where your partner tries to control you. To anyone who hears phrases like "you are overreacting," or "you are too sensitive," or "I know what is best for you." To anyone whose spouse monitors their phone, controls their money, isolates them from support systems, or makes unilateral decisions about their life. Those are not signs of love. Those are signs of coercive control. And coercive control can escalate, can become violent, can become medical, can become this, can become me. An empty shell where a person used to be. Philip thought he could fix me, thought he could erase the parts he disliked and keep a compliant wife. What he actually did was kill me. I'm legally alive, biologically functioning. But the person I was, the one who loved him, who loved our daughter, who felt connected to the world, that person is gone. And she is never coming back. Because you cannot undo what was done, cannot restore neural pathways that were destroyed, cannot rebuild emotional capacity that was erased. I'm sharing this because I want people to know this is possible, that medical coercion exists, that spouses can and do use medical procedures as tools of control, that what sounds like science fiction, like conspiracy theory, like something that could never happen, does happen. Happened to me. Could happen to you, if you trust the wrong person, if you are vulnerable at the wrong time, if you do not recognize the warning signs before it is too late. My name is Claire Whitman. I used to be a wife, a mother, a person who felt things. Now, I am an observer, a witness to my own existence, a ghost haunting the space where I used to live. And I will spend the rest of my life like this, all alone, empty, performing humanity without experiencing it. Because my husband decided that controlling me was more important than preserving who I was. If you are reading this, please, pay attention to the people around you. Notice if someone is trying to control your medical decisions. Notice if someone dismisses your concerns as overreaction. Notice if someone suggests treatments or procedures that sound unusual. Notice if someone wants you to change in fundamental ways. Because sometimes the person who says they love you is actually the person who will destroy you to make you fit their preferences. And by the time you realize it, it might be too late. You might wake up like I did and discover that you are gone. And all that remains is a shell going through the motions of a life that no longer means anything. This is my testimony. This is my warning. And this is what I have become. Nothing. I am a doctor. I am educated. I am 77 years old. And I believe them. That is what haunts me. Not what they did, but the terrifying fact that they could. I am a 77-year-old retired pediatrician. I spent 43 years of my life in hospitals, in cities like Boston and Chicago, and finally, in a quiet suburb of Portland. I have held the smallest of hands, and I have signed more death certificates than I care to remember. I believed I understood crisis. I was wrong. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday afternoon in December, my landline rang. The voice that greeted me was flat, bureaucratic, devoid of any warmth. This is the Federal Communications Commission Enforcement Division. Ma'am, we are terminating your telecommunications service in 48 hours. We have logged 26 formal complaints regarding obscene, threatening content originating from your number. My heart, a tired organ I knew well from a medical standpoint, gave a hard, painful thump. I sputtered, asking what on earth they were talking about. The line clicked, seamlessly, and a new voice took its place, deeper, laced with a gravelly authority that brooked no argument. Dr. Eleanor Vance. This is Detective Frank Miller, Financial Crimes Unit, San Francisco Field Office. Do not interrupt me. Your social security number, your banking information, they are at the center of an active federal wire fraud and money laundering investigation. The sum in question is $650 million. The primary suspect is a man named Arthur Clay. The name Arthur Clay meant nothing. I would later learn it was a name stolen from the headlines. A real financier indicted in a massive Ponzi scheme. A verifiable fact meant to anchor their lie in reality. Detective Miller told me I was considered a co-conspirator. He said evidence, including forged documents with my signature, had already been submitted to a grand jury. A warrant for my arrest had been signed. A federal tactical team, he stated calmly, was being briefed. Their estimated time of arrival at my home was 90 minutes. If you want to avoid being paraded out of your home in handcuffs in front of your neighbors, you will follow my instructions to the letter. You are now in a digital holding cell. You will remain on this video call with me. You will not speak to anyone, not your husband, not a neighbor. Any attempt to contact the police will be seen as obstruction of justice and trigger your immediate physical arrest. For the next 15 days, I lived inside my smartphone screen. He demanded I download an encrypted messaging app. He sent me files. They were masterpieces of forgery, Department of Justice letterhead with embossed seals, a federal arrest warrant with a judge signature, a wanted poster with my own driver's license photo. The documents claimed I had opened shell corporations for Arthur Clay, that I had funneled money through offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. To prove my innocence, I had to sequester my assets in a Federal Reserve verification account. It was, he assured me, a standard procedure. The money would be held, audited, and returned once my innocence was confirmed. The first transfer was $50,000, my and my husband's entire rainy day fund. The silence after I authorized it was broken only by Miller's voice. Good. Now, the retirement account. I hesitated. His tone shifted from authoritative to something genuinely chilling. Dr. Vance, you need to understand the gravity. We have other individuals in custody who refuse to cooperate. An audio file came through. It was the sound of a woman sobbing, begging, please. I have children, before the line went dead with a muffled cry. That was 3 hours ago, Miller said. She is now in a federal detention center. Do you want to join her? This is not just crime. It is industrialized, psychological torture. According to reports from the United Nations and groups like Global Anti-Scam Organization, these operations are run from massive, prison-like compounds in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar, in Cambodia, in Laos. Upwards of 200,000 people are held there, many themselves victims of human trafficking, forced to work 17-hour shifts running these scams. They are trained by professional psychologists on coercion techniques. They study current events. They forge impeccable documents. They are factories, producing despair. I became a ghost in the house I had lived in for 20 years. I moved from room to room, the phone's camera eye always on me, a red light blinking like a malignant star. I ate under its gaze. I tried to sleep, the device propped on my nightstand, Miller's occasional, whispered, "You still there, doctor?" jolting me awake. I would catch my reflection in a dark window, a hunched, pale woman, bathed in the blue glow of her own digital prison. The research on the impact is unequivocal. A study by the University of Oxford on mass fraud victims found that 86% report severe, lasting anxiety. Over 60% exhibit symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, hypervigilance, nightmares, emotional numbness. The scam does not end when the money is gone. It rewires your brain. It installs a permanent sense of shame and vulnerability. On the 15th day, hollowed out and broken, I authorized the final transfer. It was everything. Our combined life savings, our estate. The money meant for our grandchildren's education. Miller ordered me to go to my local bank branch to approve the large wire. I was to keep the live call active, my phone in my purse with an earbud in, so he could monitor the entire interaction. The bank manager, Linda, a woman who had helped us with our mortgage a decade ago, took the transfer forms. She looked at the amount. She looked at me. My hands would not stop trembling. A fine sheen of cold sweat made my blouse stick to my back. My eyes kept darting to my purse. "Eleanor," Linda said, her voice low and serious, cutting through the fog of fear. "Are you all right? Is someone telling you to do this right now?" Miller's voice hissed in my ear, a serpent in the dark. "Do not answer. If you utter one word, we have agents outside your husband's golf club. He will be in custody before you leave this building." My mouth opened, but no sound came out. Tears welled in my eyes, a silent plea. Linda did not wait. She reached across the desk, gently took my purse, and retrieved my phone. She saw the active call screen, a string of numbers with a foreign country code. She pressed the red button. The silence that flooded in was absolute and terrifying. It was the silence of a vacuum after weeks of constant oppressive noise. Then it was broken by my own ragged, shuddering sob. The real police came. The real FBI was contacted. We learned I was one of thousands. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network estimates these digital arrest or government impersonation scams have stolen over $2 billion from Americans in just the past 2 years. But the numbers only tell part of the story. In the United Kingdom, a national support group for fraud victims reported that 14% of people who lost life-altering sums to these scams admitted to contemplating suicide. I read about a retired aerospace engineer in Bristol who lost his pension and took his own life. I read about a school teacher in Cardiff who drank a bottle of cleaning solution after being told her children would be taken into care if she did not pay a fictitious child endangerment fine. The money is gone. It is not recoverable. It vanished into a maze of cryptocurrency wallets and shell accounts across the globe. What they truly took, however, is irreplaceable. They took my sense of safety, my trust in my own judgment. I was a scientist, a diagnostician. I spent a lifetime assessing evidence, evaluating risk, making critical decisions under pressure. And for 15 days I believed a complete fiction. I handed over the product of a lifetime of work to a ghost with a convincing voice. My husband Robert tries to understand, but a wall of glass has grown between us, forged in those days when I could not speak to him, when I looked at him with guilty, terrified eyes. We jump at every unknown number. We have installed a landline call blocking device. The simple joy of a ringing phone has been replaced by a jolt of dread. The horror of this story is not a ghost in the attic. It is not a monster under the bed. It is the realization that the most terrifying prison can be built without walls, using only words, pressure, and the pervasive technology that connects our world. It is the understanding that the part of you that feels too smart, too cautious, too experienced to ever be a victim, that part can be systematically dismantled. They are out there. They are working right now. They have your name, your address, and a script designed to bypass your logic and tap directly into your primal fear. If the call comes, the one that tells you you are in trouble, that you must prove your innocence, that you must stay on the line, hang up. Verify everything independently. Call the institution back on a publicly listed number. Talk to someone you trust. Because the digital cell is real, and once that door clicks shut, the only sound you will hear is the sound of your own life, being quietly, methodically, taken apart. I still have nightmares about the sleep room. I still hear the recordings in my head sometimes, late at night when I cannot sleep. You are broken. You are worthless. You are a failure. 50 years later, and those messages are still there, embedded in my mind like shrapnel. The psychic driving worked, in a sense. Dr. Cameron succeeded in breaking me down. He just never managed to rebuild me into anything functional. To this day, I check the locks on my doors 3 times before bed. I avoid hospitals. I do not trust doctors. And I never, under any circumstances, agree to experimental treatments. Because I know what can happen when you put your trust in people who believe the ends justify the means. When you believe that national security is more important than individual rights. When you let researchers experiment on human beings without oversight or accountability. This happened between 1957 and 1963. I am sharing this because someone needs to know what they did to us. My name is Rachel Morrison, and I was a patient at the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal. What I am about to tell you has been buried for decades. The doctors who tortured us are dead now. The CIA destroyed most of the files. But I remember everything. And I need you to understand that this was not treatment. This was something else entirely. I was 23 years old when they admitted me. It was February of 1958, and I had been struggling with depression after losing my mother to cancer. Nothing severe. Nothing that should have required hospitalization. But my father, a prominent businessman in Montreal, was worried. He had heard about a revolutionary new treatment being developed at the Allen Memorial Institute, a psychiatric hospital affiliated with McGill University. The doctor leading the program was named Ewan Cameron. My father told me Cameron was brilliant, respected, a pioneer in the field of psychiatry. He told me 3 weeks at the institute would cure me. He told me I would come home feeling like myself again. I was at the Allen Memorial Institute for 8 months. When I left, I did not know my own name. The institute was beautiful from the outside. A mansion on the slopes of Mount Royal, surrounded by gardens and trees. It did not look like a hospital. It looked like somewhere wealthy people went to rest. The intake process was routine. Forms, questions about my family history, a physical examination. They gave me a private room on the 2nd floor. The nurse who showed me to my room was kind. She told me I was in good hands. She told me Dr. Cameron had helped hundreds of patients. She told me not to worry. I should have worried. The treatments began on my 3rd day. They called it psychic driving. The concept, as Dr. Cameron explained it, was simple. Depression and anxiety were caused by flawed thought patterns embedded in the mind. To cure a patient, you first had to erase these patterns completely, You had to break down the damaged mind, reduce it to a blank slate. Only then could you rebuild it with healthy patterns. It sounded logical when he described it. It sounded like science. The first session took place in a small room in the basement. They gave me an injection. Thorazine, they said, to help me relax. Then they placed headphones over my ears and a blindfold over my eyes. The headphones played a recording. My own voice. I had been asked to describe my mother's death during my intake interview, and they had recorded it without my knowledge. Now they played it back to me, over and over and over. My own voice telling the story of watching my mother die. My own voice crying. My own voice saying I should have been there sooner, should have said goodbye properly. Should have told her I loved her one more time. The recording looped for 6 hours. When they removed the headphones and blindfold, I was sobbing so hard I could not breathe. My throat was raw. My head was pounding. The nurse helped me back to my room. She said it would get easier. She said the treatment was working. She said I just needed to trust the process. The sessions continued daily. Sometimes twice daily. They would drug me, place me in the room, play the recordings. But the content changed. They started adding other messages. Negative statements about myself. You are broken. You are worthless. You are a failure. Your mother died because you were not good enough. Hundreds of variations, all in synthesized voices that sounded almost but not quite human. The sessions grew longer. 8 hours. 10 hours. 12 hours. They would leave me in that room, blindfolded and drugged, listening to recordings tell me how damaged I was, how hopeless I was, how I would never be normal again. I tried to refuse treatment after 2 weeks. I told them I wanted to leave. Dr. Cameron sat me down in his office and explained, very calmly, that I was too ill to make that decision. He said my resistance to treatment was a symptom of my illness. He said if I left now, I would likely attempt suicide within a month. He said he could not, in good conscience, allow that to happen. He said my father had signed papers giving the Institute full authority over my care. I realized then that I was not a patient. I was a prisoner. The treatments escalated. They introduced electroshock therapy. Not the controlled, brief pulses used in modern treatment. This was something different. They called it Page-Russell therapy. They would induce a seizure, wait for me to regain consciousness, then induce another seizure immediately. Then another. Then another. 6 to 12 seizures in a single session, until I was too disoriented to remember my own name. They did this 3 times a week. Between the psychic driving and the electroshock, my memory started to fragment. I would wake up in my room with no recollection of how I got there. Days disappeared. I forgot meals, conversations, entire sessions. The other patients noticed it too. There were maybe 15 of us on the second floor, all undergoing similar treatments. We would try to talk to each other, try to piece together what was happening to us. But our memories were so broken that we could barely hold a conversation. Someone would start a sentence and forget what they were saying halfway through. We would introduce ourselves to each other every day because we could not remember meeting the day before. The worst part was what they called the sleep room. It was on the 3rd floor, a ward where they kept patients in medically induced comas for weeks at a time. I did not know it existed until they moved me there in April of 1958. They told me I was being resistant to treatment, that I needed a more intensive intervention. They administered a cocktail of drugs, barbiturates, thorazine, something else I did not recognize, and I woke up 3 weeks later. Or at least, they told me it was 3 weeks. I have no way to verify that. I have no memory of that time. None at all. It is just gone, erased from my mind like someone took scissors to a film reel and cut out 3 weeks of my life. When I regained consciousness, I could not walk. My muscles had atrophied. I could not feed myself. I was incontinent. I was, for all practical purposes, an infant in a 23-year-old body. They kept me in the sleep room for physical therapy, teaching me to walk again, to use a toilet again, to hold a spoon again. It took 2 months. While I was relearning how to be human, they continued the psychic driving. But now the recordings were different. Positive statements. You are getting better. You are healing. You are a new person. You do not remember the pain anymore. You are happy. You are grateful. You trust Dr. Cameron. You trust the treatment. 16 hours a day, every day, drugged and blindfolded and listening to these statements loop endlessly. I started to believe them, not because I wanted to, but because my mind was so broken that I could not hold on to my own thoughts anymore. Whatever they told me became true simply because I could not remember anything else. I was not the only one. There was a woman in the room next to mine named Margaret. She had been admitted for anxiety. Mild, treatable anxiety. By the time I met her, she had been at the institute for 11 months. She had undergone the full protocol. Psychic driving, electroshock, sleep therapy. She could barely speak. When she did, it was in short, halting sentences, like a child learning language for the first time. She did not remember her husband's name. She did not remember she had children. When her family visited, she looked at them like strangers. The nurses said she was improving. The nurses said she just needed more time. The nurses lied. Another patient, a man named Thomas, had been an engineer before his admission. He told me, during one of our fragmented conversations, that he had checked himself involuntarily for treatment of insomnia. That was in January of 1957. By the time I arrived a year later, he could not tie his own shoes. He could not read. He would sit in the common room and stare at the wall for hours, occasionally laughing at nothing. Dr. Cameron presented him as a success story during a staff meeting I overheard. He said Thomas had been completely depatterned and rebuilt from the ground up. He said the treatment had cured his insomnia. He did not mention that it had also destroyed every other aspect of Thomas's personality. I met Dr. Cameron only a handful of times during my stay. He was not cruel in the way you might imagine a villain. He was not sadistic. He genuinely believed he was helping us. That made it worse somehow. He would visit the wards, check our charts, ask the nurses about our progress. He spoke to us kindly, in a soft Scottish accent, asking how we felt, if we noticed any improvements. We always said yes. We had learned very quickly that saying no meant another session in the basement, another round of electroshock, another week in the sleep room. So we smiled and nodded and told him we felt much better. Thank you, Dr. Cameron. We are so grateful for your help. He believed us. Or he chose to believe us. I am not sure which is more disturbing. In July of 1958, I learned why the treatments felt less like medicine and more like torture. One of the nurses, a young woman named Diane, had been working at the institute for only a few months. She was kind to us in a way the other staff were not. She would sneak us extra food, let us stay up past curfew, talk to us like we were people instead of experiments. One evening she pulled me aside and told me something I was not supposed to know. She said the funding for our treatments was not coming from the hospital. It was coming from an American organization called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology. She said the society was actually a front for the CIA. She said they were paying Dr. Cameron to develop interrogation techniques for captured Soviet spies. She said we were test subjects in a classified program to perfect mind control. I did not believe her at first. It sounded insane, paranoid, but Then she showed me a document she had photocopied from Dr. Cameron's office. It was a funding proposal. The language was clinical, detached. It described our treatments in detail, the psychic driving, the electroshock, the induced sleep, and explained how these techniques could be used to break down enemy agents and rebuild them as compliant informants. It referenced something called McUltra. It mentioned that precautions must be taken to conceal these activities from the American public. It stated that the knowledge that the CIA was engaging in unethical activities would have serious repercussions. Diane disappeared 2 weeks later. The official story was that she had quit. But her apartment was still full of her belongings. Her roommate filed a missing person report. The police investigated for about a month before closing the case. No foul play suspected. Just another young woman who decided to leave town without telling anyone. I have never stopped wondering what happened to her. I was released in October of 1958. My father came to pick me up. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. He hugged me and told me he was so glad I was better. I did not recognize him. Not at first. It took me a full minute to place his face, to remember that this was my father, the man who had raised me. The nurse handed him a folder of discharge papers and told him I would need follow-up care. She gave him a prescription for maintenance medications. She told him the treatment had been a success. I had lost 8 months of my life. My memory of everything before the institute was fragmented at best. I did not remember my childhood. I did not remember my mother's funeral. I did not remember having friends, hobbies, interests. I was a blank slate, exactly as Dr. Cameron had intended, except there was nothing written on the slate. I was empty. It took me years to piece together what had happened. In 1975, the CIA's MKUltra program was exposed during congressional hearings. I followed the news obsessively. Senators questioned CIA officials about mind control experiments. Documents were released detailing the funding of research at the Allen Memorial Institute. Dr. Cameron's name appeared again and again. So did the names of dozens of other researchers at universities and hospitals across North America. The scope of the program was staggering. Hundreds of institutions. Thousands of unwitting test subjects. All in the name of national security. Dr. Cameron died in 1967, 4 years after the MKUltra experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute ended. He never faced charges. He never apologized. He died believing he had been a pioneer in psychiatric treatment. In 1988, several of his former patients, including myself, sued the CIA for damages. The case was settled out of court. We received compensation, but only if we signed non-disclosure agreements. Most of us signed. We needed the money. We needed some kind of acknowledgement that what had been done to us was real. But the agreements meant we could not speak publicly about the details of our treatment. The CIA could continue to deny the full extent of what had happened at the Allen Memorial Institute. I am violating that agreement by telling you this. I do not care anymore. I am 79 years old. I have maybe a few years left. And I need people to know that this happened. That it was real. That the CIA funded torture disguised as medical treatment, and that the doctors who carried it out believed they were helping us. Margaret never recovered. She spent the rest of her life in assisted living facilities, unable to care for herself. She died in 2003. Thomas lived until 2009. He never regained his ability to read. Diane was never found. And there were dozens more. Patients whose names I never learned, whose faces I can barely remember, who were subjected to the same treatments and released into the world with their minds shattered. The Allen Memorial Institute still exists. It still treats patients. They have renamed it, rebranded it, moved past the legacy of Dr. Cameron's experiments. But the building is the same. The basement rooms are the same. And I know with absolute certainty that somewhere in the archives of that hospital, there are still records they have not released, files they have not handed over to the government investigations, recordings of sessions, photographs of patients, documentation of experiments that were too extreme even for the CIA to acknowledge publicly. I am telling this story because I want you to understand something that most people do not. When you hear about government experiments, about classified programs, about conspiracy theories, your first instinct is to dismiss them as paranoia. But Mulcultra was real. The Allen Memorial Institute experiments were real. Dr. Cameron tortured us with the full knowledge and financial support of the CIA, and it went on for more than a decade before anyone stopped him. How many other programs are still running right now, hidden behind institutional review boards and false foundation names? How many other patients are being used as test subjects without their knowledge or consent? The CIA claims they stopped conducting unethical experiments after the MKUltra hearings in the 1970s. They claim they implemented safeguards, ethics reviews, informed consent protocols. But they said the same thing after Project Bluebird in the 1950s. They said it after the Tuskegee experiments. They said it after every scandal, every exposure, every public outcry. And then they just moved the programs underground, gave them new names, funneled money through different channels. If you are reading this, if you are listening to this testimony, I need you to remember something. The doctors who tortured us were respected professionals. They published papers. They won awards. They sat on ethics committees. And they still spent their days dosing patients with LSD, erasing memories with electroshock, and playing recordings that told people they were worthless until they believed it. Credentials do not equal ethics. Institutions do not equal safety. And the fact that something is legal does not mean it is right. I am sharing this because Diane risked everything to show me the truth. Because Margaret deserved better. Because Thomas deserved better. Because the hundreds of patients who cycled through the Allen Memorial Institute between 1957 and 1963 deserved to know they were test subjects in the CIA mind control experiment, not psychiatric patients receiving treatment. The sleep room is still there. The building still stands. And somewhere in the world, there is another Dr. Cameron, another classified program, another group of patients who trust their doctors and do not know they are being used as experiments. Trust your instincts. Question authority. Read the fine print. And if someone ever tells you they need to break you down to build you back up, run. Because I could not run. And I have spent the last 50 years trying to remember who I was before they erased me. I thought being a horror content creator meant I was immune to fear. That I understood the mechanics of dread well enough to remain unaffected. But I was wrong. Horror is not something you control by understanding it. Horror is something that controls you the moment you let it in. And I let it in every night for 3 weeks straight, until the door was open permanently. I am posting this because I need other horror content creators to understand what happened to me. Maybe some of you have experienced something similar. Maybe you will know what I am talking about when I describe how the line between the stories we tell and the lives we lead can blur until there is no distinction left at all. My name is irrelevant. I run a horror channel with just over 100,000 subscribers. Nothing massive, but enough that I spend 8 to 10 hours a day immersed in darkness. Reading submissions. Writing scripts. Editing footage of abandoned places I have never visited. Building characters from the worst things human beings can imagine. For 2 years, I told myself it did not affect me. How could it? I was the narrator, not the victim. I was the one in control. That belief died at 12:30 a.m. on October 17th. I had been researching the concept of tulpas for a video series. If you are not familiar with the term, a tulpa is a thought form, an entity created through intense concentration and visualization. The concept comes from Tibetan Buddhism, but it has been adapted by Western practitioners who claim they can manifest sentient beings through meditation and focused intent. The internet is full of communities dedicated to this practice. Thousands of people claim to have created autonomous companions that live inside their minds, entities with their own personalities, their own desires, their own thoughts. Most researchers dismiss it as advanced imaginary friends. Some suggest it is a form of self-hypnosis, a way of compartmentalizing aspects of your own psyche and giving them distinct voices. But there are darker interpretations. In 1929, explorer Alexandra David Nail wrote about creating a tulpa that appeared as a jolly monk. Over time, she claimed it became malevolent, developing a personality she had not intended. She wrote that she had to destroy it before it destroyed her. Others could see it too. She insisted. It was not just in her mind. I found that fascinating. The idea that sustained focus on something imaginary could make it real. That you could birth something from pure thought and then lose control of it. So, I did what any content creator would do. I built a character for my next series. I wanted something visceral, something that would haunt the audience. I spent 3 weeks designing her. A woman with long matted hair that hung in greasy strands. Her face was burned, the skin melted and reformed in ways that defied anatomy. One eye socket was empty. The other held something that watched with an intelligence that felt too knowing. I wrote her backstory, drew her appearance, recorded test narration describing her in excruciating detail, and then I started meditating on her at 12:30 a.m. I chose that time deliberately after reading about the so-called witching hour. Multiple cultures associate the hours between 3 and 4 a.m. with spiritual activity. The period between midnight and 3 a.m. is considered a time when the veil between worlds is thinnest. In Japanese tradition, the hour between 2 and 3 a.m. is known as the demon hour. In Chinese belief, this marks the peak of yin energy, a gateway for spirits to manifest. I thought 12:30 a.m. would be early enough to avoid genuine spiritual interference while still maintaining an atmosphere of dread. I was wrong about so many things. The meditation was supposed to help me inhabit the character. Method acting for writers. I would close my eyes and visualize her standing in the corner of my room. I would imagine what she would say, how she would move. I kept detailed notes of these sessions, documenting how her personality emerged. At first, she was exactly what I had created, a hollow echo of my own design. But after the first week, something shifted. During one session, she tilted her head in a way I had not planned. The movement was too organic, too spontaneous. I found myself thinking I did not tell her to do that. But, of course I did. I was the one imagining it. It was all in my head. Except my hearing started changing around this time. I am talking about a genuine physiological shift. I could suddenly hear things I should not have been able to hear. A neighbor walking 2 floors above me, and I could track their exact location by sound alone. Conversations happening through walls that should have been soundproofed. The hum of electronics in the apartment next door. It was like someone had turned up the gain on my auditory perception, and I could not turn it down. At first, I thought it was stress-related. Hyperacusis, maybe. Increased sensitivity to sound. It happens to people with anxiety disorders. But this was different. This felt like my brain had unlocked something it was not supposed to access. Like I was receiving frequencies that human ears are not designed to perceive. The night it happened, I was sitting at my desk at 12:30 a.m. My MacBook Pro was the only light source in the room. I had dimmed everything else to create the right atmosphere. The meditation had become routine by then. Close my eyes. Visualize her. Let the character solidify. I was committed to making this series something special, something that would push my channel to the next level. I closed my eyes and immediately she was there. Not as a vague impression, but as a fully formed presence. She was standing behind my chair. I could sense her with a clarity that felt physical. I could smell old smoke and something else, something organic and wrong, like burnt meat left in the sun. And then I heard the footsteps. Not in my imagination, not as part of the meditation. These were real footsteps in my apartment. A slow, rhythmic pattern. Thump, drag. Thump, drag. The sound of someone who could not quite walk properly, pulling one leg behind them as they moved across my floor. My eyes snapped open. My apartment was empty. The footsteps continued. Thump, drag. Thump, drag. They were coming from behind me, from where she had been standing in my visualization. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911. But my screen was black. Not off. Black. There is a difference. When a phone is powered off, the screen is simply dark. This was a void, an absence of light so complete it seemed to pull at my vision. I pressed the power button. Nothing. I held it down. Nothing. The footsteps stopped directly behind my chair. The smell intensified. Smoke and rot and something that reminded me of hospitals, of sterile spaces trying to mask decay. I forced myself to turn around. Nothing was there. My apartment was empty. But the air was heavy, oppressive, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the pressure drops and you can feel the storm building in your bones. My laptop screen flickered. Once. Twice. Then it went black like my phone. But in the reflection of the dark monitor, I saw her. She was standing behind me, exactly as I had imagined her. The matted hair, the burned face, the empty eye socket, and the one that watched with that terrible knowing intelligence. She was not translucent or ghostly. She looked solid, real. Her reflection was more vivid than my own. I did not move. I could not move. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run, but I was frozen, staring at her reflection in the black screen. Her mouth moved. I could not hear her voice with my ears, but I heard her anyway, transmitted directly into my consciousness on that frequency I had been unlocking over the past 3 weeks. The frequency I had been tuning into every night at 12:30 a.m. "You wanted to know what I look like," she said. "You spent so much time building me, imagining every detail. Now you will never have to visualize again. I am here. I am real. And I am not going anywhere." The laptop screen flickered back on. My own face stared back at me, pale and terrified. Behind me, the empty room. She was gone from the reflection, but I could still feel her standing there. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my living room with every light on, researching tulpa removal techniques. The internet had thousands of posts from people who claimed they had created thought forms and lost control. Most of the advice was useless. Ignore it until it fades. Firmly tell it to leave. Perform a ritual banishment. But, buried in a forum thread from 2016, I found a post from someone who described the exact same progression I had experienced. The enhanced hearing. The sense of a presence that felt too real. The moment when the boundary between imagination and reality dissolved completely. Their advice was simple and terrifying. You gave it life by believing in it. Now it believes in itself. That is when it stops needing you. For 3 days, I did not meditate. I avoided my desk. I slept on my couch with the lights on. My subscribers started asking why I had not posted. I ignored the messages. How could I explain that I had accidentally manifested something by thinking about it too intensely? That I had performed a psychological experiment on myself, and it had succeeded in ways I did not want? On the fourth night, I woke up at 12:30 a.m. Not from a nightmare. Not from a noise. I just opened my eyes at exactly 12:30, as if something had triggered an internal alarm. My apartment was dark. I'd fallen asleep with the lights on, but every single light was now off. She was sitting on the floor in front of my couch, watching me. Not her reflection. Not a hallucination. Her. Solid and present and real in a way that defied everything I understood about reality. "You invited me," she said, and this time I heard her voice with my ears. It was my voice. The same voice I used when I recorded narration for my videos. She was speaking with my cadence, my inflection. "Every night you called to me. You built me piece by piece. You wanted me to be real. So, I became real." I tried to speak. My throat was closed. "The others did not understand," she continued. "The ones who try to create us. They think we are games. Imaginary friends. But you built me from fear, from darkness, from every horrible thing you have researched and written about. I am not your friend. I am everything you have spent 2 years channeling. And you gave me a door to walk through. I found my voice. I did not mean to. Intent does not matter," she said. "Belief does. Focus does. You spent 3 weeks visualizing me every single night at the exact same time. Do you know what that does? It creates a pattern, a ritual. You opened a frequency and then you kept it open. You trained yourself to perceive things you should not perceive. And now I can use that frequency whenever I want." I wanted to tell her she was not real, that she was a manifestation of stress or sleep deprivation, or the psychological consequence of spending too much time immersed in horror. But I could not say it, because I did not believe it. She felt more real than anything else in my apartment. More real than I felt in that moment. "What do you want?" I whispered. She smiled, her burned face cracking in ways that should not have been physically possible. "I want what you gave me. A story. A purpose. You created me to haunt people. So that is what I will do. Starting with you." The lights came back on all at once. Every lamp, every overhead, every device in my apartment blazing with light. She was gone. But the smell remained. Smoke and rot and hospitals. I left my apartment that morning and went to stay with my parents. I told them I needed a break from work, that I was burnt out. They believed me because I looked like I had not slept in weeks, which was true. For 2 weeks, I did not touch my channel. I did not write. I did not think about horror. I tried to convince myself it had been a stress-induced hallucination, that isolation and excessive research had created a psychological break. I read about the Philip experiment, a group of Canadian parapsychologists in the 1970s who deliberately created a ghost through collective belief. They held seances, and the ghost responded. It rapped on tables, answered questions. They believed it so thoroughly that it manifested. But it was not real, the researchers concluded. It was a psychological phenomenon, a collective hallucination born from expectation. Except they never explained why multiple people experienced the same hallucination at the same time. Why the table rapped in response to questions only one person was thinking. How belief could create effects that violated physical laws. I went back to my apartment on the 15th day. I had to. My rent was due. My subscribers were waiting. I could not hide forever. Everything was exactly as I had left it. except my laptop was on. The screen showed my editing software, open to a project I did not remember creating. The title was simple, The 1230 Frequency. I clicked play. It was footage of me, sleeping on my couch, walking through my apartment, sitting at my desk with my eyes closed, meditating. 3 weeks of footage recorded from angles that should have been impossible. There were no cameras in my apartment. I had checked multiple times. The final clip showed me sitting at my desk 2 nights ago while I was staying at my parents' house. The apartment was empty. I was not there. But in the video, I was sitting in my chair, staring at the screen. And behind me, just barely visible in the darkness, she was standing with her hand on my shoulder. The video ended. A new window opened. A document. 1 sentence. You should not have stopped uploading. Your subscribers miss you. So do I. I called a friend who works in tech. Asked him to check my apartment for hidden cameras, for spyware, for anything that could explain the footage. He swept every inch. Found nothing. No devices. No malware. No logical explanation. Are you sure you did not record this yourself and forget? He asked. Like a fugue state or something? I was not sure of anything anymore. That night, I did what I should have done 3 weeks earlier. I researched tulpa dissolution techniques, but I did not stop at forums and anecdotal advice. I found academic papers on thought forms, on how sustained visualization creates neural pathways that can persist independently. How meditation practices designed to create distinct mental voices can result in autonomous cognitive processes that feel genuinely separate from the primary consciousness. The brain, under the right conditions, can fragment itself, create parallel processes that seem to have their own agency. But knowing the mechanism did not make it less real. It did not make her less present. I am still living in my apartment. I am still running my channel, but I do not meditate anymore. I do not work at 12:30 a.m. I avoid the specific time, the specific ritual that I used to invoke her. Most nights it works. Most nights I am alone. But sometimes, when I am editing footage or writing a script, I will smell smoke. Old smoke mixed with something organic and wrong. And I will see her in the corner of my vision, just outside the range where I can look directly at her. She is patient. She is waiting. Because I created her from patience. From the slow burn dread that builds in a horror story. From the monster that does not attack immediately, but lets you know it is there, watching, waiting for the perfect moment. Yesterday, a subscriber sent me a message. I tried that meditation technique you mentioned in your video about tulpas. I have been doing it every night at 12:30 for a week now. I think it is working. I can almost see her. I did not post a video about tulpas. I deleted everything related to that project before I published anything. But when I checked my channel, there it was. A video titled Creating Your Own Horror, a practical guide to tulpa meditation. 23 minutes long. Detailed instructions. Encouragement to practice at exactly 12:30 a.m. My voice. My editing style. My face on camera, explaining the technique with the calm authority I use in all my videos. I did not make that video. But it has 68,000 views. 3,000 comments. People thanking me for the instructions. People describing their progress. People saying they can feel something forming in their meditations, something that feels more real every night. I tried to delete the video. It reappeared within an hour. I tried to disable my account. It would not let me. I contacted the platform's support. They confirmed the video exists. They confirmed I uploaded it. According to their logs, I uploaded it 3 weeks ago at exactly 12:30 a.m. I am writing this as a warning. If you are a horror content creator, if you spend your days immersed in darkness and fear and the worst things human imagination can produce, be careful. Be so careful. Because the line between fiction and reality is thinner than you think. And when you stare into the void long enough, when you invite the void into your mind through ritual and repetition and belief, eventually the void does not just stare back. It moves in. Last night I woke up at 12:30 a.m. I have been waking up at 12:30 a.m. every night for the past 2 weeks. It is not voluntary anymore. It is like my brain has been programmed, like the ritual I created has become a pattern I cannot break. She was sitting at the foot of my bed, solid, real, watching me with that knowing eye. "You are still fighting," she said. "But you already lost. You lost the moment you gave me a name, a face, a story. Do you know what that means in the old traditions? Naming something gives it power. Knowing its true form binds it to reality. You spent 3 weeks doing both. What do you want from me?" I asked. My voice was steady this time. I was too tired for fear. "I want you to keep creating," she said. "Keep uploading. Keep building your audience. Because every person who watches, every person who meditates at 12:30 a.m. trying to recreate what you did, they open a door. They tune into the frequency. And some of them will succeed. They will create their own versions. And those versions will be connected to me because I am the template. I am the original." She leaned forward, her burned face inches from mine. "You wanted to create viral content. Congratulations. You succeeded." The smell of smoke filled the room. When I looked down, my hands were shaking. When I looked back up, she was gone. I'm posting this because I do not know what else to do. I cannot delete the video. I cannot shut down the channel. Every attempt I make, the content reappears. She is using my platform, my voice, my face to spread, to teach others how to open the same door I opened. If you have watched that video, if you have tried the meditation, please stop. Do not continue. Do not practice at 12:30 a.m. Do not visualize with intent and focus and belief. Because it works. It actually works. And once you succeed, once you create something that feels autonomous and real and separate from yourself, you cannot uncreate it. You can only watch as it grows beyond your control. She is still here. She is always here. And now she has a platform to reach more people, to teach them how to do what I did, to create an army of thought forms connected through the same frequency. The worst part is not that I created her. The worst part is that I still have to create. I still have to write, to edit, to post. Because if I stop, if I abandon the channel, she will find another way to spread. At least while I am here, I can try to warn people. I can try to undo the damage. But I do not think I can. I think this is how it works. The creator becomes the created. The host becomes the haunted. The one who told stories about monsters realizes they are the monster now. Or at least, they are the door through which the monster walks into the world. If you are reading this, if you are a content creator like me who spends your time building nightmares, learn from my mistake. The darkness we channel is not harmless. It is not just entertainment. When you focus on it hard enough, long enough, with enough belief and intent, it becomes something else. Something that does not need you anymore, but will not let you go. I have to go now. It is almost 12:30 a.m. And she is waiting,